Hello and welcome. In this episode, we're going to be talking about for loops and for each loops. Now in Java and many other programming languages, for loops is very similar to counting. And what I mean by that, whether it's counting 0 to 10, 10 to 0, 100 to 110, whatever, that's essentially in its purest form what a for loop is doing. Let's look at this example here and you'll kind of see what I mean. So there's a couple different criteria in this for loop. We have int I equals 0, you have I less than or equal to 10, and I plus plus. And remember, I plus plus is the same thing as I equals I plus 1, which is just adding 1 to itself. So here, first piece of criteria is we're creating this integer I and setting it equal to 0. Then while I is less than or equal to 10, we're going to add 1 to I. That's basically what this for loop is saying, what the criteria of this for loop is saying. And then we're just going to go ahead and print I. So take a second, think of what this might print out. If I'm printing out I, where I starts at 0, and I continues until it's equal to 10, and we add 1 to I every time, what's this going to do? Well, let's run it, and we'll find out. Now you can see here, a little small, I know, but it prints out 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10. So it's counting 0 to 10. So what we're really doing is I starting out as 0, like I said. As long as I is less than or equal to 10, we're going to add 1 to I. So first time through, I is 0. Second time through, we add 1 to I, because I is less than or equal to 10, I is 1. And this will keep going until I is 11, because 11 is not less than or equal to 10. So, like I said, it's basically a counter. And we can do this in reverse, too. So, if I made I equal to 10, and then I did while I is greater than 0, and instead of adding 1 to I every time, I minus 1 from I every time, then reran it, you could see now it goes 10, 9, 8, 7, all the way to 0. So it does it in reverse. So like I said, at its most purest form, a for loop is basically just this counter. How is it useful, though? Well, let's take a look at a for each loop first. Here, and this will be our first look at what an array is, we have this array of numbers 1 to 5. Now, don't get too entranced with what an array is, what this code is doing, this in brackets numbers. Don't worry about that. Just know it's a group of numbers 1 to 5, where each number, including 1 to 5 and in between, is in it. We have this for each loop right here. I'm going to go ahead and comment this top one out so we don't let it interfere. Where it says for int I numbers. All this is saying for each integer I inside of numbers. Numbers being this group of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So for each I, where I represents each one of these numbers, it's going to print it out. So let's go ahead, run this, have it print out, and I'll print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have integer I. First time through represents 1 because it's it represents the first element in numbers, which is 1. Second time through, I is 2. Third, 3, fourth, 4, fifth, 5, and then it hits the end, and then it stops. Now, for each loops, real easy way of seeing elements in an array. The equivalent of doing it in a regular for loop is doing something like this. I'm going to comment this out again real quick. Is doing this, which is a little bit more intensive. I have to keep our array uncommented. Oops. So we have, and I'll bring this down so we can see it. We still have our numbers array. Here, what we have to do is we have to make an integer I starting at 0. Then we do while I is less than the length of numbers, length being the amount of elements. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll see in a sec how this works, because you would think you would need less than or equal to, But that's not true. And that's because the index, which we'll talk about in a second, starts at 0. And then we do I++. We add 1 to I. So in this case, we're having I act as an index. And this is just going to continually count up until it hits the length of numbers. So indexes for arrays start at 0. So it would go, so to get these, the index of 1 would be 0, index of 2 would be 1, index of 3 would be 2, index of 4 would be 3, and index of 5 would be 4. So doing it while I is less than the length, where the length is 5, since there's 5 elements, works out because indexes start as 0. So if I went ahead and printed this out, so run it, bring this up, you'll see it still prints out 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And it is more intensive than this for each loop up here. You have to, set the criteria more. You have to know about what indexes are. So all we're doing is, like I said, to recap it, we set an integer starting at 0. That's our starting point. We go I while I is less than the length of numbers. This is numbers, and the length is the amount of elements, which is 5 elements. So while I is less than 5, we add 1 to I every time. And I, like I said, is just an index. So it's representing a place in this array. So the first time through, I is 0. The 0th element in numbers is 1, because we're using the index after numbers. Then next time through, I is going to be 1. The 1th index in numbers is 2, and so forth, until it gets to 5. And then eventually, or by that time, the for loop will meet its criteria, won't be less than the length of numbers, and will be out of the for loop. So it might have been a little confusing. We'll talk more about arrays, I think, in the next video. I'm not sure. But that's a good introduction to it, and you'll definitely understand a lot more once we cover it in depth. But I kind of wanted to make the point that for each loops are a lot easier when cycling through or printing out an array. And this is the equivalent in a for loop. But I will mention that for loops are most commonly used. You don't see a lot of for each loops in Java. So you probably won't use for each that much. Another downside to for each loops is that you can't manipulate the data like you can in for loops. So if I went back and used this for each loop, so let me comment this out. Let's say I want it to change one of the values, right? Printing it out. Say I want it to change I equal to 3 or something like that. And then I went ahead and printed out the same for each loop. Without that, let's see if it changed. Let's go ahead and run this. See, first time through has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Second time through, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this I equals 3, you would think maybe you could change the value in here to all 3s, and then this would print out all 3s. It can't change the values. In a for loop, though, and I'm going to have to go ahead and recomment this out. I can do that. So again, this is getting a little bit into arrays, but I could go ahead and do numbers I equals 3. Then I'll duplicate this for loop, take that out, and the next time through they'll all be 3s. So let's run it. Okay, so you can see the first time through, which is this right here, it prints 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which are the elements and numbers. But the second time through, it prints out 5 3s. So 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. And that's because after we print it out here each time, we set that index to 3, which sets every index to 3 in the numbers array. So instead of this being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it would be 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. And that's what we print out here. So that's a downside to for each loops, and while, again, for loops are more popular. So other than that, I did want to show how I thought about for loops in an abstract way. So let me switch over. So a good way to remember how the structure of a for loop looks, how the criteria is, well, at least for me, doing this. You can define sort of a for loop as having a start, a finish, and a continue condition. So, and what do I mean by that is that an example of a start condition is where you're beginning your for loop. So that's that I equals 1, that int I equals 1 equals 0, whatever. That finish is where are you ending your for loop, what condition needs to be met for your for loop to stop. That could be like when I is greater than 10, or when 10 is greater than I. And then your continue, and that's your I plus plus, your I minus minus. So if you have a better way of understanding things by putting terms to it, and you want to kind of do that drag and drop style thing that I did with variables, you could think of a for loop of having a start, semicolon, finish, semicolon, continue, where the start condition is like that integer I equals 0, whatever integer I equals 10, your finish condition being something like while I is less than or equal to 10, it will keep going. Once it hits 11, it'll stop, and then that continue is that I plus plus, that I minus minus, that tells it to add 1 to I or subtract 1 from I every time. So that's how I usually teach it, how I usually remember it, and usually students have a better time remembering what goes where if they can remember terms with the certain criteria. Other than that, though, I'll see you guys in the next video, which I think will be arrays, but I'm not sure. But I hope you stay tuned, and I'll see you then. Thanks.